Welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered Dialogues, where we break down the most pressing issues of our time with no sugarcoating. I'm your host, Sally, and today I am very excited to dive into a topic that has sent shockwaves through Indonesia's media landscape, the terrifying attacks on Tempo's office, and the concerning response from the government. Joining me today are two incredible guests with very different perspectives. First, we have Ryan, a journalist and media advocate. Welcome, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, Sally. This is an issue that's deeply personal to me, and I think it highlights a dangerous trend we need to address immediately.
And on the other side of the debate, we have Andreas, a political analyst who believes the government's response has been misinterpreted. Andreas, glad to have you here.
Thanks, Sally. I think there's a lot of nuance that's missing in this conversation, and I'm looking forward to discussing it.
All right, let's get straight into it. Ryan, these attacks on Tempo, first a severed pig's head, then a decapitated rat, are undeniably threats to press freedom. But what's even more shocking is the government's response, particularly Hassan Nasbi's joke about cooking the pig's head. What does this tell us about the state of government media relations in Indonesia right now?
Sally, it tells us one thing. The government does not take press intimidation seriously. Tempo is one of the most critical media outlets in the country, and instead of condemning this clear act of terror, the government responded with a flippant, dismissive remark. That is not just poor crisis communication. It's dangerous. It sends a signal that attacks on the media are not a priority. If the government won't even pretend to care, what kind of message does that send to those trying to silence the press?
Hold on, Ryan. You're assuming bad faith where there might not be any. Yes, Hassan's comment was poorly worded, but to call it dangerous? That's a stretch. Governments aren't perfect in their communication, and people make mistakes. But let's not act like this is proof of some grand conspiracy against press freedom. The police are already investigating the case, and I don't see how a spokesperson's misstep overshadows that.
But Andreas, doesn't the lack of immediate and serious condemnation from the government worry you? This isn't the first attack on the press, and the trend is getting worse. We're talking about a climate of fear here.
Look, I'm not saying that press intimidation isn't a problem. What I'm saying is that we need to separate government incompetence in communication from outright hostility. You're painting the entire administration as being against press freedom based on one ill-advised remark. That's not fair.
It's not just about one remark, Andreas. It's about a pattern. This government has been defensive, dismissive, and, at times, openly hostile toward critical media. The numbers don't lie. 73 reported attacks on journalists last year alone. And what has the government done? It hasn't strengthened protections for journalists. If anything, it has emboldened those who want to silence them.
You're oversimplifying. Governments worldwide struggle with media relations. That doesn't mean there's an intentional campaign to suppress the press. And let's not forget, this is a democracy. There's criticism all the time, and yet media outlets like Tempo still exist, still publish, still criticize. If the government really wanted to crush the press, wouldn't they have done it by now?
That's an interesting point, Andreas, but Ryan, do you think the government's passive approach is just mismanagement, or is it something more calculated?
It's both. I think they know exactly what they're doing. They aren't outright shutting down the media because that would cause international backlash, but they're allowing an environment where intimidation thrives. By staying silent or making dismissive remarks, they are enabling attacks on journalists while maintaining plausible deniability.
And that's the core issue here. What does this say about the future of press freedom in Indonesia? Andreas, do you think this will blow over? Or is this a tipping point?
I think it's a moment of reflection, but I don't think it's a crisis. Media will continue to push back, civil society will demand better, and the government will have to respond. We've seen backlashes before, and I expect one here too. But I don't buy the argument that this is the beginning of the end for press freedom.
I hope you're right, Andreas. But the longer we let this slide, the harder it will be to push back when the next attack happens. And if history tells us anything, there will be a next time.
And that's where we'll leave it today. This is an issue that goes beyond just one media outlet or one government statement. It's about the fundamental right to free press and how seriously we, as a society, take it. Thank you both for this heated but important discussion. To our listeners, let us know your thoughts. Should the government be held more accountable, or is this just political noise? We'll be back next week with another deep dive into the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and stay engaged.